This is one of our free webinars that we do from time to time as a way of supporting those of you who have worked with us in our workshops, supporting your continuing journey to Ninja, and also as a way of saying hello to those of you who haven't worked with us before. So a little bit of introduction. We're part of a team at Think Productive. We are a team of ninjas. So we are all on a mission, basically, to help people find ways of working with less stress and less overwhelm and more what we like to call playful, productive momentum. So what we're really interested in isn't just how do we get people to do more work, but actually how do we all do our best work, have fun doing it, and have a life outside of work. So I'm Grace. I'm one of the productivity ninjas. So you'll typically find me on the road or sometimes virtually on a screen, working with different groups, organizations, teams, helping them to develop their own ninja skills and to put those into action. And I'm joined today by my lovely colleague, Jess. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jess?
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. My name's Jess. I'm the Director of Communication and Connection at Think Productive. So, that basically means if you're here because you've read an email from Think Productive or you've seen a LinkedIn post about the webinar, that was me. So, thank you for coming along. I'll be here supporting Grace, here to, if you have any technical problems, just send me a message on the chat and just to talk about high functioning fear.
Absolutely. So high functioning fear is a term that I've made up, but it is a term that I've made up to describe something that I have noticed over the years. So I've noticed this in the ninja work that we do, but I've also noticed this in some of the other work that I do. So I also do some coaching and also write books. And in fact, high functioning fear is something that is kind of featured a lot in my latest book, which is called Struggle, the Surprising Truth, Beauty and Opportunity Hidden in Life's, I'm going to say shiftier moments to keep the language clean on this session, but you can look up and see what that word actually is later on if you like. So why are we talking about fear? Well, those of you who might have been on one of our Productivity Ninja sessions may recognize this character here. We call it the lizard brain. So the lizard brain is the primitive part of our brain that is responsible for keeping us alive. And it does that by activating the fight and flight stress response. So super useful if you're being chased by a bear and you're in a life-threatening situation, slightly less helpful when it shows up at work. So typically, the way that I often use, the examples I often use are if you're procrastinating, chances are your lizard brain is going, oh, that looks scary. Not sure I want to go there. Oh, emails. Emails are safe. I can deal with emails. I'll do those and I'll deal with that later. So that's the flight response. That's the avoidance. But your lizard brain can also be responsible for email rage. Don't know if anyone's ever had email rage. It's like road rage, but with email. Oh, yeah. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of email rage, that can feel a lot like being under attack. So that is often where we find lizard brain showing up. So we talk about it in our How to Be a Productivity Ninja workshop, The Way of the Productivity Ninja, and Delegate like a Productivity Ninja as well. It turns out that fear is often behind a lot of the reasons why we don't delegate enough. But as well as that, it's also something I talk about a lot in my book Struggle, but also in the talks and the workshops that we've started to deliver around that. Because when we start thinking about struggle, so anything that we're struggling with at work or in life, really, struggle can feel a lot like being inside a tunnel. And when we're in a tunnel, we get tunnel vision. We get fixated on how do we get out of here? So either, whoa, this was not part of the plan, back up, go back the way I came, or I need to press on through, I need to push through this, I need to find the exit and get out of here because this is not part of the plan. And actually both of those, whether you go back or go forwards, are both part of the fight and flight instinct. And that's that primitive survival instinct that basically tells us there is a threat, do something. But the problem is when our brain is in threat mode, the choices of what we can do are really limited, basically to running, hiding, or fighting. So how do I get through this? How do I get away from it? Get rid of it? anything except actually being in the moment with the struggle. And when we jump into action mode, at that point where our limited options are running, hiding, or fighting, we can end up recreating what I call our toilet roll moment. Does anyone remember this moment back at the beginning of the pandemic, where everyone went out and stockpiled toilet paper? Let me know. I can't have been the only one. So what was going on there? I think what was going on there? Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what was going on there was we felt out of control. There were decisions being made that we had no control over. There was a genuine life threat out there. And so, naturally, we felt a bit like, what the heck is going on here? And there was a lot of disruption, a lot of change, and a lot of uncertainty as well. And it's almost like we kind of went, you know what? I can't control the decisions that the government makes, can't control the decisions that my employer or my clients or my child's school, can't control any of those decisions. Do you know what? One thing I can do, I can make sure we don't run out of toilet paper. That I can do. And I think enough of us clearly did that we went out and created a global-wide toilet roll shortage. And in fact, so much so that even the people who went, this is ridiculous, why do we need to stockpile toilet paper, got to a point where they were like, hang on a minute, the supermarkets are running out, so maybe I do need to go and buy some after all. And, isn't it interesting that sometimes, one person or one group of people's kind of panic reaction can also create work for everybody else as well. And so at work, our reaction might not be toilet roll per se, but maybe fight mode might look like, I just need to work harder. I need to take control. I need to, let's go back. I need to, hustle on harder. Work my way through this. So fight mode can end up looking like overwork. It can look like I need to take control. You know what? Like I need to make it happen. I can't trust anybody else with it. So maybe that reluctance to delegate might also be a version of fight mode. It might look like perfectionism, like I can't afford to get it wrong. Everything has to be absolutely perfect. But it also could look like defensiveness. So, everything has to be perfect. So therefore, every deviation is liability. Every disagreement is opposition. If I go into a meeting and someone doesn't agree with me, I might take that quite defensively because it feels like it's opposition. Or it can look like fixing mode as well. So it's not like I want to fight you. I want to make everything fine. I want everyone to be happy. I want, so if someone's upset, I might jump on, quick, I've got to fix it. And I might do that before I've even stopped to listen properly or ask some questions or help that person to feel heard. I might just hear, problem, must fix it. And so those are all different versions of what I call high-functioning fight even. So high-functioning fear looks really productive on the outside, and let's face it, fight mode can be really productive. It can help us to meet deadlines and get past obstacles and break down barriers, but at the same time, what helps us to run a sprint actually might not help us to run a marathon. And so we certainly can't build bridges with that same fight mode that we can break down barriers. So that might be something, and notice someone said on the chat already, this sounds very familiar. So that might be something that you notice, fight mode, either in yourself or in someone else. Or you might resonate more with flight mode. So flight mode might look like avoidance, that classic procrastination. It might look like withdrawal, like, I'm not sure I want to get involved in that. It might look like disengagement. So if you're in your organization, it's like, do you know what? I'm just not going to be as engaged as I was before. We might hold ourselves back from speaking up in that meeting or from going for that pitch or that proposal or that promotion, because it's like, do you know what? I think it's safer just to keep my head down and just get through day by day. What about freeze? Freeze, I guess, looks like sticking to the status quo. It's like, let's just keep everything the same because I know what I'm familiar with. I know where the threats are if I know where everything stands. I don't want to change everything, or I don't want to change anything. So it might look like resistance to change. It can also, sometimes freeze doesn't look like nothing's happening. It can look like there's a lot going on. It can look a lot like busyness. It's almost like, look at all this stuff. I'm so busy. I don't have time to deal with that thing that feels like a struggle. In fact, this one is one that's been coming up a lot recently when I've been working with organizations that are going through a lot of change, maybe restructuring and things like that. And all of a sudden it's like, I'm just too busy to even think about this. And yes, that could well be true because your workload's gone up because so much has changed. And a lot of that new stuff is uncertain. So that could also be creating a bit of a freeze mindset in our people. And then the slightly lesser known one is Fawn. So this is kind of like if you imagine an animal in the wild saying to its predator, please don't eat me, I'll be your friend. So that is the Fawn response. It's basically where we think we will be safe if everybody's happy with us. So it can look like people pleasing. It can look like accommodating, or being too overly accommodating, being too agreeable, saying yes to everything when you know you need to say no, or putting everybody else's needs above your own. So I'd love to just stop there and ask you, what do you relate to? What do you resonate with? Let us know in the chat. What's your toilet roll go-to? And also, what toilet roll behaviors do you notice maybe in your teams and your organizations?
Yeah, I definitely relate to some of the comments, like feeling a little bit of all of those sometimes. Yeah, and I think for me, it's fight is the one I go to the most, but I've definitely experienced all of them. And just when you were talking, I was reflecting and thinking some of those create the next one. So I might be working really hard and being a perfectionist and then getting defensive if that's not being recognized, or somebody might want to change, disagree with what I'm saying, but I've worked really hard. And then so they're sort of, it's snowballing the effect, some of those reactions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one thing sort of ricochets onto the other. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what's coming through on the chat?
Annabelle asked if you could just flip back to flight for a second on the slides.
Yeah.
A few people saying flight, avoidance and procrastination, which, can look like you don't care, but it's the opposite is true.
Absolutely. Sometimes the things we procrastinate on are the ones we care about the most.
Yeah, it can depend on the task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Charlotte says, because you want it to be right. That's why we kind of hold back on it. And then also, like you said, Jess, that can then go into the defensiveness if then someone has a different opinion and some feedback. Anything else coming up in the chat, Jess?
Yeah, fight mode, you could also have over-checking and micromanaging, that lack of trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you now show the freeze slide from Michelle?
There we go. Yeah, absolutely, Annabelle. We're not alone. It's reassuring to see others' feelings.
Yeah, like Julie's comment, noticing a tendency when being asked to do 1,000 things at once just to procrastinate on all of it, and do something like expenses, which feels safe. It's low priority. But you feel like you're accomplishing something, but not the urgent thing, or maybe not the important thing.
Absolutely. And and it's because when we're in this kind of stress state, it's painful. It's uncomfortable. And that whole thing of like accomplishing something gives us a dopamine hit. So that actually feels good. So this also explains why sometimes, when you're freezing and you're procrastinating, or you end up kind of going, I'll go and do the expenses, or I'm going to give myself a bar of chocolate because I really need some chocolate right now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Kathy's saying a recognized freeze on days when everything seems too much, and then that creates that paralysis. Absolutely. It's all the things. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so, it is actually really, really reassuring to know that we all do it. And it is really, really human. It's part of being human, not superhero, as we talk about here at Think Productive. And I think it's good to recognize, okay, this is what high functioning fear looks like. Because, if we think back to the reason why this happens, basically it's to protect us. It's our self-preservation sort of instinct. And if it was a genuine life-threatening situation, if you were being chased by a bear, fight mode will help you to defend yourself. Flight mode will help you to find your exit. Your freeze and your fawn will help you to sort of neutralize the threat by saying, look, if I play dead, or if I'm your friend, then you might not eat me. All of those make sense when we think about it from that primitive instinct perspective. But the problem is, from a work perspective, when we're operating under high functioning fear, we get really narrow vision. We start thinking in black and white, because when we're being chased by a bear, you don't want to see everything. You don't want to say, oh, look, what's behind those mountains over there? Like, the sun looks beautiful today, or there's some juicy berries in the corner, because those things will get you killed if you were being chased by a bear. But that also means if we're in a stressful work situation and our high functioning fear is kicking in, what we see might not be the whole picture. So what's keeping us alive might also be keeping us blind. Because in order to get us that very quick reaction of, how do I defend myself? How do I escape? How do I make myself safe? Our brain basically narrows everything down into two options. It's that black and white thinking. It's what's safe, what's dangerous. Who's right, who's wrong? Who's for me, who's against me? What's good and what's bad? And it sorts everything into that kind of binary thinking. And what we lose is the nuance. It's the possibilities. It's the different perspectives. And so what that affects, the impact of that, could be innovation. You know what? If it's not safe to take risks or make mistakes, then we won't innovate. We'll stick to what we know. We won't try anything new. If we're defensive against different opinions, then we're less likely to be creative anyway when we're in defense mode, because we just want to keep everything the same. Same with the freeze and the busyness. But at the same time, if we're not open to other people's ideas, then maybe we don't innovate as much because we don't hear everyone's ideas. And fawning has the same effect as well, because if everyone's too agreeable, then there's no dissent. We might end up saying a fake yes. And actually, sometimes when we talk about fixing meetings in our meeting session, we talk about the hippo effect, which is basically the highest paid person's opinion. And it's almost like, do you know what? In order to survive here, I need to make sure that the alpha in the group is the person I agree with. And so when the highest paid person's opinion is aired, everyone else tends to lean towards agreeing with them. And that's a bit of high functioning fawning happening there. So it can absolutely affect how much openness and how much innovation happens within our work. But it can also be a result of a lot of firefighting. So if we are constantly fighting fires, our lizard brain will basically take the next surprise that lands in your inbox and go, there's another fire. There's another thing I have to deal with. Whereas sometimes it's just a surprise. It's not actually a fire. But also, we can carry on continuing that firefighting when we're in lizard brain mode, because that kind of constant change, uncertainty, reactivity can make us hypervigilant. And so we start seeing everything as a fire. We start reacting to everything as a fire. We start scanning for threats everywhere. And that can affect our ability to see the wood for the trees. or to be able to think critically or complex situations, because everything's just like fire. But then it can also affect our psychological safety. So, maybe it's affecting how we communicate with each other, our relationships with each other. So I love this this quote here that Brené Brown says, leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings, or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective, unproductive behavior. And I think that's very true if you're leading a team, but it's also very true in terms of leading yourself. If we're not noticing our fears and feelings, then they kind of drive our actions without us being in control at all. Sometimes it feels like we're being in control because it's like, I'm taking action, but actually, one of the best quotes that I know on this is Carl Jung, who said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So noticing and naming the bear is probably one of the first things that's useful to do in this situation. So if we know that high functioning fear can be eroding all sorts of things, from our productivity to our innovation to our team relationships and our trust, then maybe what we can do is start to notice it in action and name the bear. And I think, Jess, we've been getting quite good at doing this at Think Productive, haven't we? To be able to kind of like say, I'm having a bear moment, or email rage coming in, and sort of being able to name that.
Yeah, and talking about the stinky fish. So if there's a fish behind your sofa and you leave it there, it's going to stink your whole house out. But if you just get it out and air it with your team in a safe place, then you can get rid of that stinky fish.
Absolutely. And I love that, because when we call it a stinky fish, we can all go, okay, there's some fear involved in there. And, and it makes it easier to look at the fish rather than that defensiveness kind of thing kicking in as well.
Yeah, it's a nice way to be able to say, without saying, I'm a bit worried about this, or I'm having a feeling. So this is my stinky fish, and it just helps start that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the more that we have that shared language to be able to talk about some of these sort of fears and feelings, that the more even with stinky fish, like the minute you bring it out in the open, it starts getting better. And, sometimes all we need to do is air it, and there's actually nothing we need to do to fix it. It's just just needs to get out in the open. So yeah, good place to start to notice and name your high functioning fear. And then inviting curiosity. So this is something we do a lot of in our struggle sessions, in that curiosity can be like the antidote or the alternative to fear. So fear gives you that narrow vision. It's like, how do I get through this, get rid of it, get away from it? Curiosity gives you a wider vision, because it then goes, oh, let's notice everything else as well. And of course, if what we're dealing with isn't a life-threatening situation, maybe curiosity can serve us better than fear. So fear will say, danger, don't go there. Curiosity will say, oh, that's interesting. Let's take a closer look. And so maybe we will start to pay attention and go, okay, what's really going on here? So maybe something's gone horribly wrong and you're like, oh, I can't deal with this, and you have a reaction to that. But curiosity might go, okay, tell me more. What happened? How did that go wrong? What happened there? And when we use that sort of curiosity lens, we might notice, oh, okay, maybe there's an improvement here we can make to the process. Or maybe it's these different combinations together that created the perfect storm. And then there could be some useful information we can take forwards. Same thing goes with feedback. Like, it's always quite hard to, when we get feedback, as much as we tell each other not to, I think it is very human to take feedback personally. But, again, what if we started to apply curiosity rather than fear? So rather than fear saying, that was really poor feedback, I know nothing, I'm rubbish at this, I'm going to get fired. Maybe it's, okay, let me understand, help me understand, tell me more. So if you came to one of our struggle sessions, at the end, when you fill in the feedback form, if you decided that out of 5 stars, you only wanted to rate it 1 or 2 stars, you would then see a question pop up that says, oh no. It's not easy to get negative feedback, but walking the talk. We really want to understand more. Please tell us more. Where did we not meet your expectations? What were your expectations? And it's that invitation to lean in and pay attention, to go, okay, tell me more. What can I take from this? So curiosity is what I call shining a light in the middle of the tunnel. We often see the light at the end of the tunnel as like a good sort of metaphor for hope, don't we? But what would it look like if we shine a light in the middle of the tunnel? Because maybe the tunnel is where the work is. And maybe there's more perspective and more possibility that we can discover if we're willing to take a closer look. The other thing that's useful to do is communicating safety. Like, how do you actually communicate safety to yourself? So, back in the day when we used to encounter bears and other such life threats, what we would do is, that would be an acute stress situation. We would react to that, and then we would head back to the safety of the tribe. We might take whatever we've hunted with us and, cook that over a fire and share that with the tribe. We might recount our stories of said bear and kind of share with each other. And those are all different ways that we would, I guess, complete the stress cycle. And, in terms of our human, biology, we would then be able to discharge all of those stress hormones. So what does that look like in a day-to-day work life? In fact, let me open this up and just ask, what's something that helps you when you feel that high functioning fear? What is something that helps you to feel safe? What helps to communicate a sense of safety to you when you're in a stress situation?
Some good stuff coming in on the comments. Feeling heard by someone, that's what I was thinking. Being able to share that with and talk it through with somebody who can really hear and hold the space for you. Donna says getting another perspective, that can sometimes help, see that maybe it wasn't as scary from a different perspective.
Yeah, it's kind of like that campfire conversation. Like, if I can have someone with me, that company actually helps to make it safer to wrangle with the stuff. Yeah.
I love the comments about how to sort of look after yourself in those moments. So looking back on what you've achieved to empower yourself and create momentum. I love that, Rebecca. And, Kathy said, you're alone, taking a moment to remember what's actually really important. Is it this email that's gone wrong? Or is it, there are bigger things, but it's hard to see that perspective sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Rebecca, your example is a very good example of what we call a ta-da list. Like remembering all the good stuff that happens as well as the things that don't go well. Absolutely. Yeah, love that. So yeah, lots of really good stuff coming up in the chat there. And I think, sometimes it's good to think about sort of from a human biology, physiology point of view, even things like breath, like, okay, breathing from my belly rather than my chest, slowing down my breathing, those kind of breathing exercises, they can be helpful. Posture, voice, pace, like lowering my voice and my tone and maybe speaking a little bit slower and more calmer already makes me feel calmer. And this is something I have to remind myself because so me and my husband, when we have heated discussions, I wear my emotions all over my face, all of them over my body. Yeah, I'm very expressive. And sometimes he'll go, whoa, stop shouting at me. I'm like, shouting? Yeah. And so, recognizing that actually even just sometimes changing my tone of voice can help to communicate safety to him and to me. Yeah, love that. So connection, community, humor is another one. So laughter I remember, Jess, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a situation, I think, where you were on the receiving end of somebody's snarky email. It was a bit of an email rage kind of moment. And I just said, you know what? I think snark is just lizard brain trying to look cool.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that helps to kind of, that humor really helps to sort of diffuse, this.
Shake it off.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and yeah, and speaking of shaking off, like that whole movement thing. So that's why people like to go for a run after a stressful day, or a walk, or a dance. You see sort of animals, for example, dogs, after they've been on like alert, they'll like shake it off, won't they? So yeah, that again is a human biology thing and physiology thing that can be helpful. But then when you think about it, maybe there are some practices that we can also cultivate to help to cultivate that environment of trust. So some of the things that have been mentioned here in the comments about actually reassuring team members. How do we work through mistakes together, for example? So we've got this thing called My Latest Mistake at Think Productive, which is like a channel where we can just share, like, oh, here's my latest mistake, here's what happened. And then what happens is that everybody else kind of gathers around and helps to bring that reassurance, or helps to bring that sort of curiosity lens rather than the fear lens. And it means it normalizes it. Jess, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to see like leadership as well, owning up to mistakes and role modeling that, it doesn't matter where you are in the business, we all make mistakes. And I know Elena, our managing director, she is really passionate about owning up to mistakes, and she's always on there. Not to say she makes loads of mistakes, but we are all human.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really helpful for different team members to see that this is something that is part of the whole culture, whatever your position is in the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember Elena was one who actually set up the channel, and she was the first one to post on it as well. So again, that sort of role modeling to go, it is safe, and we all do it. Brilliant. Yeah, and I think creating those sort of habits and practices can go a long way to creating that environment where we can all thrive. And not just survive, but actually thrive and bring our best human brain rather than just our lizard brain into those kind of situations. And and it may feel like what the kind of example that we've told, it may feel like that's really far away from where you are right now in terms of your organization, but maybe there are small steps that we can start doing for each other. So it might just be starting with you and a couple of trusted members of your team, and maybe start to practice that, but maybe then that practice will get adopted a little bit wider. And so in everything that we do in our workshops, it's always about kind of what's your next step. So if it feels like that's really far away, what's the very next step? What's like the 1% or 10% improvement that you can see working, and build it from there. The other thing I would also say, before we start to move towards questions, but also to hear from you guys as well, is slow down. You see, sometimes we go so fast that we just kind of tell ourselves, like, what's the next thing that needs to happen? How fast can you get it done? How quickly, how soon can you deliver that? And sometimes it's in our everyday conversations that we set the culture, and we end up creating this culture that on a speed above all else. But actually, if what we're looking for speed, our lizard brain will go, oh, I can do fast. I can react and respond really quickly because that's what I'm designed to do. But it responds quickly with a very limited set of options. And so maybe one of the things we need to do is slow down from time to time, or have those, I've heard someone call it fire break moments, where you go, okay, like there are times when I just stop and I take stock and I give myself that sort of breathing space to return back to that kind of stable state, rather than constantly being in fight and flight mode. So that might, from a personal perspective, look like a weekly review, which is something that we talk about a lot in our productivity workshops. But also from a team perspective, it might be a weekly rhythm where we check in with each other. In fact, I think, Jess, I think I spotted recently that you guys had a directors meeting where you just actually took a load of time to start with a personal download. Is that right?
Yes, in our directors meetings agenda, the first point is just personal download. And, that could be 5 minutes per person. There's 3 of us. But the last time we all met up, we took an hour, and it was only a 2-hour meeting, but it's what, we were led by what we all needed, and we all needed that time. And then the second hour, we managed to achieve what we needed because everything was out on the table about where we were and how we felt. And it was really good.
Yeah. And I would suspect that if you hadn't have taken that time, it would have taken longer than 2 hours to work around and sidestep. What do you really mean by that? And all of that kind of stuff that's hard to grapple with if we haven't got that fear and named the bear and got that out of the way. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Graham, who is our chief ninja, who wrote the book How to Be a Productivity Ninja, one of the latest book that he's working on is all about kindness and leadership. And one of the things he talks about in his principles of kindness is that speed and rushing, so busyness, is the greatest source of accidental unkindness. That when we're trying to go too fast, that's when we're accidentally unkind to each other, as well as to ourselves, I would suspect. Okay, so I hope that's given you a little bit of a flavour. What I hope I've done is kind of name the bear a little bit to give you a way of spotting high functioning fear as it happens in yourself, as it happens in each other. We've got some time now, which we'll open up to questions. So do feel free to type in your questions into the Q&A or into the chat. I'd love to hear from you and anything that we can help with on this kind of topic. While you're typing, let me let you know some other resources to support you on this journey. So one of the things that I'm experimenting with is that we are running a series. So myself and Chris Kisley, who those of you who have maybe joined in Graham's Kindness Happening may recognize Chris because they work together on that. But basically, we're going to explore this idea of high functioning fear, but also how that shows up in when we're navigating change, uncertainty, and our own stuff, basically. So it's a 5-week series, and it's the first time we're piloting it. So we would love to have some of you on there if you'd like to join us. The QR code is there, and Jess has just popped the details into the chat. Couple of sessions that particularly relate to this that we can run in-house for you guys from Think Productive is Struggle, which is about unlocking creativity and resilience in the face of adversity and uncertainty. So it is about understanding how do we struggle, what's that process, what can we do about it. So we it was a session where we unpack that in a little bit more depth for individuals. But also the other thing that we are bringing to you very soon is creating an environment to thrive. And this is more designed for leaders. And it is about how do we create this as an environment for our teams, for our organizations. So those of you who are thinking we could definitely do with more of this in our workplace culture, if you're in a position where you're leading a team of some sort, this could be the session for you. Or maybe it's something that you suggest to some of your organization. And that's also something that features in one of our leadership and management programs. Jess, you want to talk us through this one because you're the expert on this one.
Thanks. So we are running our level 2 of our 3-series leadership and management program. It starts in April next year, and so we're taking applications now. This is for if you're sort of in middle management, operational, departmental management, or you might have been a team leader or a manager for a few years and you want to sort of take it to the next level. So it focuses on human-centered management skills. We do a masterclass. So creating the environment to thrive is one of the masterclasses. We've got coaching to empower. So giving your team the skills to coach themselves and coach each other. Loads of good stuff. I will post the link in the chat if you want to learn more about it. And I think there's a QR code.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Okay, let's tackle some of the questions that are coming through. Okay, so Ella says, what are some tactics to help move yourself into action when you've named the bear? So for example, an intimidating piece of work you need to do, but you're avoiding it. Yes. So like I notice I'm, my lizard brain's going, this is scary, don't want to do it. Okay, so you've named the bear, you know that you're procrastinating. Sometimes it's helpful to go, well, what is it particularly that's making this scary? What is intimidating about this piece of work? And so one of the things that Graham shares around procrastination, and in fact, I think we've covered this in a free webinar in the past about procrastination, is decoding. Like, so we use the acronym DUST, and that stands for difficult, undefined, scary, tedious. Like, which one of these categories does that fall into? And then that might help me to then go, okay, if it's tedious, for example, how do I make it more interesting? If it's scary or if it's big, how do I make it smaller? How do I, maybe just tackle one bit at a time? But also, what's the thing that my lizard brain's telling me about it? So somebody said earlier, it has to be right. Does it have to be right? Could it just be good? Could it just be a start? So using curiosity to diffuse some of those fear stories can open up some different possibilities for you and can also make us more creative as well. Brilliant. Fantastic. Oh, wonderful, Annabelle. Been with us twice today already. Fantastic. Any other questions coming through, Jess?
Yes, there's a question here from Rachel. What have you personally found has made the biggest difference to reducing fear?
Oh. I guess for me, it's noticing it, but also noticing it in other people as well as in myself. So there's a story I tell in Struggle in the book about, it's actually a story from the marriage counsellor's office. So me and my husband, we were recounting some kind of argument. I don't even remember what the argument was about now. But there was a point where the marriage counsellor said, that sounds like panic to my husband. And I was like, that's not panic. Like, he's articulate, he's being really unreasonable and really stubborn, but he's not panicking. Like, listen to him. And my husband went, no, yeah, actually, that's exactly what's going on the inside. And what I didn't realize was, oh, this is what a high functioning panic attack looks like in my husband. That when he's panicking, it doesn't look like he's hyperventilating or he's like, all over the place. This is what he looks like. And here's the difference here that makes, because if I think he's having an argument with me, or he's attacking me, or he's misunderstood me, my go-to is fight. It's, I've got to respond to that. But if I think, oh, he's having a panic attack, why would I argue with that? And so my go-to is, okay, I need to make him feel safe first. And then if there's still an issue we need to work out, we can work that out together. And so everything changes when we notice that high functioning fear, because then it creates choices for us.
There's a question here from Gurdeep. Any general tips or examples you can share on how tedious tasks can be made more interesting? I'm going to share a blog post in the chat. If you have anything to add, it's our DUST procrastination tool, and T is for tedious. So there'll be some tips there to help.
Yeah, and gamification. So any reward, prizes, points, all the things that, I'm going to have that cup of tea after I've done the thing I've been put off. If you're competitive, a bit of accountability and competition can often be helpful. I know some people who get together to do their tax returns, and then I think there's something like who buys the first round of drinks afterwards based on who finishes their tax return first.
I know Hayley, one of our productivity ninjas, she has a friend and they have accountability where, I can't remember if it's they stick to their mindfulness or their exercise every 3 months. They'll go to a spa day together and they keep each other accountable on that. So it's like a real treat. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Brilliant. Right. So just to say, we are officially at the end of our official time together, but we always do a little bit of an unofficial after show. So Jess and I are very happy to stick around and answer some more questions. So do keep them coming if you'd like to. For those of you who do need to go, this is all recorded. So Jess will be sending out the link to how you can access the recording afterwards as well. Brilliant. What else is coming on through?
So from Julie, what if you're not competitive and introducing competition between teams actually makes you struggle because more with the thing because you're scared of letting people down. So is there other ways to do it?
Yeah. And this is where it's kind of like knowing yourself well and knowing your team well are both really, really useful things to feed into how you do it. So let's not make a competition then, let's make it a collaboration. So what can we support each other with, rather than how do we sort of compete against each other? So, in a similar way, sometimes when we do when you guys do your huddles, you start with one of the questions is, what are you stuck on? What are you stuck? What can we support each other with? So sometimes that can be a good one as well. And also, I noticed that we tend to be a lot more courageous when we're doing it for someone else. Like, so if you're someone who isn't competitive and you much prefer sort of that support and collaboration, then actually, when you're doing it for someone else, you might actually be braver. I've noticed that in that, like say ruthlessness, for example, is something that we all struggle with on the team. But if sometimes I'll say, no, I think, Jess, I think we need to be ruthless there, or I'm going to help you say your no for you, and vice versa. Sometimes that can be a helpful thing as well.
Question here. Imposter syndrome can throw me into the Fawn response. Do you have any tips on challenging the fear when in meetings with people that are, quote, above you?
I think sometimes it's helpful. So one of the things that we often talk about in our meeting session is asking, what's the purpose of this meeting? And what's my contribution? So, what are we trying? What's our collective purpose? Why is this meeting happening? But also, what's my individual contribution that you're inviting into this meeting? And I think that can also be, those two questions can also be good for thinking through that Fawn response. So, what is the purpose of this meeting? What am I asked to bring here? So if what I'm asked to bring is a different perspective, for example, that those people above me may not see, then rather than it being something that they don't want to hear, it could be, but actually this is why you brought me in. This is why I'm in this meeting. So my role is to bring that insight. That can help, because then you're bringing it back to purpose rather than my purpose is I have to make you like me. I'd say that's probably a good place to start. Jess, is there anything you'd add to that one?
No, I think that's, it is a hard one, and you sort of need the buy-in from the people who are above you to, to see that you need that clarity. So it comes back to communication as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why that whole culture thing is so important, because if those who are senior can create a culture where it's like, I really want to hear from you. And so some people say there are no stupid questions, or I know like Graham, sometimes when he's book writing, he'll say, I'd rather hear it from you than a 1-star Amazon review. Tell me. So things like that can lay the ground to go, this is what I want to hear. Then you go, okay, so what you want from me is my honesty rather than my agreement. Great. That gives me permission to do that. Fantastic. Any more from anyone else? Okay. So hopefully you found that useful. We do run these sessions once a month, is it, Jess?
Yes.
Yeah. So the best way to do that is, if you haven't already, come on over to our website. So that's thinkproductive.com and sign up. So if you sign up to the newsletter, you'll get to hear about all the free webinars, and indeed that link on there will show you all the different ones we've got coming up. And hopefully we'll get to see you on another session. Thanks so much for joining us. If you think this will be a useful thing to share with a colleague or a team member, team leader, then Jess will be sending out the link to where this will live on YouTube, and so you can share that with them as well. Maybe you can use that to get a conversation started on high functioning fear. But I'd also love to hear from you personally as well. So I'd love to hear what you decide to do with this, because none of this works if we don't put it into work. So what you decide to try, how it goes, let me know. So feel free to find me. I'm on all the usual social media places. So LinkedIn is often a good one. Come and find me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request and say you were on this session, and then let me know how it goes. So that's it from me. Jess has just popped another link in for the Adventures in Uncertainty program. That starts in a couple of weeks. So if you do want to join us, do get your ticket soon. And I think that is about it. Jess, anything else you want to say?
No, I would just love to hear some bears that you will start naming. So yeah, if you just start sending them in. Don't even say the context, just say this is the name of my bear. That would be really fun.
Absolutely, yeah. Or if you want to post anything on social media and just tag us in, it's like, bear this. At Think Productive, at Grace Marshall. Love it. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you, everyone.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon.